Coming to you live from the shadow of the big house, it's IT4U. Tips and tricks on ITS tools, products, services, and more with your host, Jean Mackey. Okay, these are interactive webinars brought to you by Information and Technology Services. And if you're having any audio or video problems other than the one we just solved, tell us in the chat pod, and if it's not on our end, we can offer some troubleshooting tips. If you're watching the YouTube closed caption version of this, look in the description for a link to a doc with all the live links. Here's some info for mobile options for participating. Don't know what we're doing in January yet, but we'll figure it out. We are going to have a Google topic in February, probably late February. Don't know what that will be yet either. If you need an accommodation to participate, please do let us know. Today, we are covering scheduling in Business Objects with Laura Bolletino, and scheduling really is one of the cooler things in Business Objects. It can save you a lot of time, so I'm glad we're covering this. And here we go, and I'm turning it over to Laura.
Thanks, Jean. So I agree with Jean. Scheduling is a rather cool feature, and I'm going to be talking about what, why, where, how, when, and what else related to scheduling reports. So first, what? What is scheduling? Well, it's a feature where you can have a Business Objects report run at a time you specify. It's really kind of that simple. Why would you want to do it? Well, say there's a report that you need to run every week, every month, every 3 months. If you schedule it, then you don't have to remember, oh, today's the day I need to run the report. You can just set it up and Business Objects will take care of that for you. Another nice thing about scheduling is you can have the results sent in email to yourself or to someone else, whoever it's appropriate. All right, let me get into how, which is to say the demo. So here I am in Business Objects, and I've got a report called Students Registered by Career that I'm going to schedule. I right-click on it, and I choose Schedule from the menu. And basic scheduling, just taking all the defaults, what I can do here is just click Schedule, and it goes. So this takes me to the history page, which gives me some information about the name of the report, who I am, the instance name, that's the time that this is running. And over here I have a status thing. I can click refresh here to get an update on the status. Pending was before it ran, and now it has failed. So I can click the failed link to get some information. It tells me the name of the report, when it ran, or when it tried to run in this case. And the thing I'm interested in here is down at the bottom, the error message. No data to fetch, enter term, no given value. So this report has a prompt, and I forgot to respond to it. So let me go back and do that. And click back.
And am I right, that's one of the most common things that go wrong?
It's one of the things, yes, that can go wrong. It's pretty easy to forget. So I can reschedule it by clicking the name of the title here and coming over here to Actions and choosing Reschedule, which takes me back to where I was. So to respond to the prompt, I come over here to the prompt link, and there's always a link here with if there's a prompt in the report. If there are no prompts, then you don't see the link. So I can click Prompts and click Modify. And it brings up this dialog box that's very much like what I see when I run a report by hand. So I put in whatever term I want here. I click Apply. And then I can click Schedule. And again, it's pending, ready to start. So while we're here, let me talk a little bit about what an instance is, because each of these is an instance. An instance is basically the thing that gets created when you schedule a report. So when you first schedule it and it's pending, the instance is just the information about how it's going to run, when, what report, what the results, where the results are going. Once it starts running, it's the report that's actually running, and let me see if it's running by now. Click refresh. Oh, finished already. Okay. So when it's running, then it is the instance is the running report. And then when it finishes, it's either, if it's successful, the instance is the results, and if it failed, then the failure is the information about what exactly happened. So I can click Success here to get some information. Again, name of report, when it ran. It also tells me the duration. It tells me it took 10 seconds to run, and I find that handy to know how long it took. I can then go back, and to get my results, I click on this date and time link here. Click that, and it opens up. And here are my results. So that is scheduling at its absolutely most basic. So let me talk a little bit about where you can schedule. You can schedule reports in your BusinessObjects favorites. Some units have a folder that they share where they can schedule reports. But the main thing to know is you can't schedule anything in UM Maintained or in the User Shared folder. And every BusinessObjects user has access to schedule in their favorites. So I get back to my document list by clicking Document List up here. And now let me schedule it again and talk about some other things that are other options. So again, I right-click it, choose Schedule, and I've got all my options again. So the first option is Recurrence. And the default option, which is what we got earlier, is now. The report runs now. So why would you want a report to run now, to schedule it to run now? Well, there's a couple reasons. One is, especially if the report takes a while to run, you can let it schedule and then let it run, and then you could be doing other things in BusinessObjects or in any other application. Even if your machine crashes, the report still runs and you will still get the results. So that can be kind of nice. The other thing about running a report now is that I find that scheduled reports run faster than when they are run by hand. So if I take the same report and I run it at the same time of day during business hours with about the same load, the scheduled version takes about half as long as if I run it by hand. And so when a report is running for a very long time, or especially if it doesn't even finish, I recommend scheduling it, because usually when it's scheduled, it will finish even though it didn't finish when you ran it by hand. All right, but there are a lot of other options for recurrence. So the first one is once, and that's literally once. I can say I want it to run, tomorrow, a week from today, whenever, at a particular time that I set here, and the date that I set. Next choice is daily. I can run it every day or every 3 days, every 15 days. And let me just mention something about the time here. So when I'm running it only once, it runs once, and I only need to set the start time. But if I'm running it more than once, which is what I'd be doing when I run it daily, I need to think about both when I want it to start and when I want it to stop. And the thing that's easy to overlook here is that the end date is in 2024. It defaults to 10 years in the future. So if you want it to run every day for, 3 weeks, you need to change not only the date here, but the year. Otherwise, it will keep running for all that time. All right. I can do weekly. Say which day of the week I want it to run on. I want it to run on Monday, and I can have it actually run twice. I can say Mondays and Saturdays. I can do monthly. And again, it's however many months I want, let's say every 3 months. And I can say when it's going to start. I want it to start on tomorrow, whenever that is. I've got the nth day of the month. Run it on the 4th of every month. I've got the last day of the month. I've got this X day of nth week, which is to say I want it to run on, let's say, the 3rd Wednesday, Friday of every month, starting this month. This will let me do that. And then there's one other option, which is calendar. So a calendar is just a list of dates, and the idea is that it's a set of dates that we can't specify using any of those other options. There's something else that we need to do. And we've got 3 calendars set up. Let me show you them. So in this drop down here, we've got 3. I'm going to look at the month-end close calendar first. So those of you who use financial data know that on the 4th day of every month, the 4th business day of every month, we close the books for the previous month, and then the data is loaded into the data warehouse, so it's available for querying on the 5th business day of the month. So this calendar has a list of the 5th business day of every month. And I'm just going to point out one thing about it, which is that there is no date in July, which is intentional because in July, again, as financial users know, it's not just month end, it's also year end, and that process takes longer, and we don't know exactly when it's going to finish, so we can't put a particular date on the calendar. So in July, if you schedule by this calendar, just run the report separately. I see I've got a question.
Is there a preferred time of the day to run the report, such as 7 a.m.?
We don't have an actual preferred time. There are 2 times that it's good to avoid. One is whenever the particular data set you're using is refreshing, and there is a refresh schedule that explains when that is. Jean's got it in her list of links that she'll make available at the end of this presentation. And the data set refresh times are different for every data set. The other time you want to avoid is between 4 and 5 a.m. because the BusinessObjects servers reboot every day at that time. And if your report is running at that time, then it will fail. Other than that, it's really a question of using your own judgment, really. If there's a limit to the number of reports that can run at the same time. And if there are more than that number that are scheduled, then they'll just queue up and wait until one finishes and then another one will be able to start. So, you know, if you schedule a whole lot of them at a particular time, if there's too many, they'll just wait. I guess it's kind of nicer if they get spread out, but it's really kind of a judgment call. All right, we have 2 other calendars I'm going to talk about briefly. These are both payroll related. The day after the biweekly pay confirm and the monthly pay confirm. And again, I'll just look at the biweekly one. Again, it's just a set of dates on the calendar, and you can schedule that. By that, so for this particular case, let me set it up to run daily. I'm going to run it every day, and I'm going to have it start at, let's say, a few minutes from now. So let me say 9:35. Okay, so that's recurrence. We already looked at prompts, but let me just make sure if I've gotten, I don't have a value, so I need to be able to put one in here. Again, I just pick whatever term I want, click apply. Maybe it didn't take. Okay, there we are. And then there's formats and destinations, which you can do a lot of very useful things with. So when we accepted the defaults, what we got was the results came as a Webby report, and they were the instance was in the as the history of the report in the folder that the report's in. And I've got a lot of other things I can do instead. One is, instead of a Webby report, I can choose Excel or Acrobat. And I see I have a question.
I believe specific user accounts can only run/schedule a certain number of reports at a time. For example, I think a max number is 6, at least for my account, so I have to space out my schedule of reports in order to avoid reaching the max number of running instances at a time, which would produce a failed report schedule.
All right.
Scheduled report.
That used to be the case, but as of June, that should not be happening anymore. So you should be okay even if you run, you have a bunch of reports scheduled to run at the same time. On the other hand, if you want to space them out further, that's fine too. Okay, so I can choose Excel or Acrobat for my format. And for instance, if there's a report that you run and every time you run it, the very first thing you do is export the results to Excel, you can choose this Excel option, and then BusinessObjects will do that for you, and then it saves you a step. That's format. And then as far as destinations go, there's the default one, which we talked about. You can also send to a BusinessObjects inbox, but I think the more commonly used one is email. So to do that, I check email recipients, and then I need to open up this options and settings to go into more stuff I need to tell about. So the first thing is to uncheck the job server's defaults, and then it brings me up several things. So I need to put in who I want this message to go to. So some email address, and it can be you, it can be somebody else, it can be several people. You can copy yourself if that makes sense. The subject here is optional. I tend to like to have a subject so that when the message comes in I know what it is. And one simple thing to do is to just pick title out of this drop-down list. Now, an important thing to do is to check Add Attachment, because if you don't, it won't attach the results. And if you do that, you want to do the specific name, not the automatically generated one. And you can pick the title out of this list. And then it's also important that you check Add File Extension, because if you don't do that, then when you get the results, Excel will not recognize it as an Excel file and you won't be able to open it up. You can put message text in here if you want. It's optional if you're sending it to somebody else and you want to say, here's the monthly report or whatever. And then the other thing you might want to do here is clean up instance after scheduling. So what that does is that after the instance runs, if it fails, the instance gets kept in the list of history so that you can see why it failed and you can correct the problem. But if it succeeds, then the instance is not kept in that list because the results were sent through email. And so that's useful if you're scheduling reports on a regular basis. After a while, you can get a long list of them building up, and it can be harder to find the ones that you're looking for. If you check this option, then that gets taken care of for you. So let me go ahead and schedule this. And again, now this time I'm getting a different status. This status is recurring. Recurring is like pending, which is to say it's going to run at some time in the future. But it's different because it's going to run more than once. So it's just a recurring thing that's going to happen. And let me click Update here, refresh. And it's still recurring. I'm going to try once more. Okay, so what's going to happen when the time for this report comes around, when it actually starts going, is that it's going to split off a copy of itself. And then the recurring instance will still be here, but there will be an additional instance that's running. That will be the one that actually runs and then succeeds and sends me results in email. So that's pretty much the basics as far as that goes. Let me also go back to Document List and show you a couple of cool things there. Now that I have scheduled this report, there's a number of instances here. I have now scheduled 3 instances. And it tells me when the report was last run. Now that's not when I ran it last by hand, that's when it last ran by a schedule. What's nice about that is if I know it's supposed to run every day at whatever time, I log into BusinessObjects, I can look at this list and see immediately whether it has run today or not. Another thing I can do is right-click on the name of the report and choose View Latest Instance. And that will show me the latest successful instance without me having to go to History and then click there. So there we are. Let me just say something about sending stuff through email. This report has no confidential data in it, so it's perfectly fine to send it through email. But if you are working with confidential data, it's important to not send it through email because email is not at all secure. I mean, I kind of think of it as it's okay to send something through email if it would be okay to post it on a public web page, because that's about how secure email is. And I see I've got a question.
Lee asked, what happens if I ask it to be sent by email but the size of the report is too large, like maybe 20 meg?
Let's see, if the report is too large, then I think what's going to happen is probably your email is going to refuse it. It's going to fail at that end. I don't remember offhand what the limit is for BusinessObjects in terms of the largest Excel file it can handle. All right, so sending stuff through email, as I was saying, confidential data has to not be sent through email. If you're not sure whether the data you're using is confidential or not, please check with your supervisor. Okay, now, one other thing. Let's say, for example, I'm going to close this. Let's say, for example, that I want to schedule the Department Reconciler report to run every month on the month-end close calendar. So that report is in the UMaintain folder, but I can't schedule in UMaintain. So in order to schedule it, I have to copy it into my own favorites. So let me do that. Go down to UMaintained, to Financials, FN01. Okay, so here's the report I want. Organize copy. Come up to my favorites, get the folder I want, and organize paste. And I've got a question.
Jerry wants to know, what are the alternatives for sending confidential information if not email? SSH?
Well, there's the BusinessObjects inbox. if the person you're sending to has the, has access to Business Objects. There's also just leaving it in Business Objects itself rather than sending it outside. Okay, so let me go to this Department Reconciler report. And the first thing I want to do is look at it and just see what it's prompting for, since those are the prompts I'm going to have to respond to when I schedule it. So I can find that by clicking Refresh All. And what happens when I schedule a report on a recurring basis is every time the report runs, it's going to use the same values of the prompts every month. So first prompt is fund. I probably want the same fund every month, same department ID, same program code, but I'm not going to want the same fiscal year and accounting period every month. So there's a way that you can set it up so it will use the current fiscal year and the previous accounting period every time the report runs. That'll get filled in. I'm going to show you how to do that. It involves modifying the report. So I will cancel it here and edit it. What I'm going to do is edit the query once Java comes up. All right, so edit query. Now this report has 6 queries. They're called data providers, and they show as tabs at the bottom of the report. I want to add a new one. So I'm going to click Add Query. And a new tab is going to appear down here after I tell it which universe I want. FN01, okay. So here's my query. I'm going to rename it just so that when I look at this later I'm going to remember what it is. I do that by right-clicking, Rename Query. And I'm going to call it Fiscal Year and Accounting Period because that's what I'm going to put in this query. So all I'm going to put in this query is the current fiscal year and the previous accounting period. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to display them from the Revenue Expense Account Ledger. And then I'm going to put a condition on it, a query filter. I want the fiscal year to be equal to. And now instead of using prompt or constant or value from list, I'm going to choose object from this query. Then what I do is I go down to Report Objects. And this is a special object called Current Fiscal Year that fills in the current fiscal year from whatever it is you're running the report. I choose that, I click OK. And now it says fiscal year is current fiscal year. I'm going to do the same thing with accounting period. Accounting period equal to object from this query. Again, I go down to Report Objects, and I choose Previous Accounting Period. All right, so this query is going to show me current fiscal year, previous accounting period. Now I need to save this before I can take the next step. So I go to Edit Report, click Save, back to Edit Query.
So you don't have to run it?
I don't have to run. I can run it, but I don't have to. So now I go back to the first data provider that I have, and this one prompts for fiscal year. Well, I want to get rid of the prompt, and instead I want to use the fiscal year that I pulled in the other query. So what I choose here now is Result from Another Query. I scroll down to my fiscal year and accounting period, choose fiscal year, and OK. And now it says the fiscal year is the one from that other query. I'm going to do the same thing for accounting period. Result from another query. Again, scroll down to here, take accounting period, click OK. And so every time this runs, it's going to fill in the current fiscal year and the previous accounting period. Now I have to go through and do this in all the other data providers, but I'm not going to take the time to do that now. It's just that's how you would do it when you go about it yourself.
And this is the nifty query on query feature.
This is the nifty query on query feature used with the equally nifty report objects. So that's pretty much it on scheduling. So a couple just reminders of important things. Do remember to respond to the prompts. Remember whether your data is sensitive or not when you're deciding whether to send it through email. And if you do send stuff through email, remember to fill in a to address, to click Add Attachment, and Add Extension. So with that, questions?
Question for me. Do you want to cover when you have to change, when you change your mind about when you want something to run?
Oh, thank you. That's a good idea. All right, so I'm going to close this, leave the page, and let me go back to this report I scheduled earlier on a recurring basis, and I guess I'll go to History. Okay, so it's on a recurring basis, and I can actually click recurring here and find out when it's going to run. Well, it's going to run every day at 9:35 a.m. And maybe I don't want it to run it every day. Maybe I really wanted it to run every 3 days. So what I can do is go back, highlight the recurring instance, click reschedule. Now I have this new option here, which is replace. So what I can do here is either create a new schedule from the existing one if I want to have a second recurring instance for this, or I can replace the existing schedule, and now what it's going to do is basically modify the schedule I have set up. So then I can go to recurrence and say, okay, now I want it to run every, let's say, 3 days, not every 1 day. And let me set it to start today, like in a minute or so, or a minute ago, so that we can actually, I can show you the results of the email. Schedule that. All right, I still have one recurring instance, and it still kept the parameter that I had. The only thing I changed was the recurrence. Let me click update. It's still recurring. Once more. All right. Well, sooner or later, this is going to then run off a copy, run the report, and send the results through my email, which is where I'll be able to see it. So, other questions? All right, sounds like there's nothing else. Then I will turn things back over to Jean.
Thank you, Laura. Go back to my little PowerPoint. As promised, I got some resources for you. So back when Business Objects was my main focus, which was a while back, I used to work closely with Laura, I put together a little scheduling and business objects resource page in MyLink, and using report objects and query filters, that's what I'm going to be updating, but I haven't updated it yet to bring in that query on query feature. And then, as Laura mentioned, the Data Warehouse, the dataset refresh schedule, because that's important when scheduling. So I'll put the recording on the IT4U page in MyLink for this. If you're not on my announcements list, here's where you can sign up. And if you need more help, it's best to go through the Service Center, and they can find us. So we're going to stop the recording right now, but please stick around to give us some feedback.